Hi Eric, good morning. Hi Brendan, good morning. Can you everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can certainly hear you fine. Go on.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just we were just setting up the live stream and all the backend things. I think we are now set almost. We'll wait for. Hi Eric, good morning. Hi Brendan.
Hey, how you doing? Well, and good evening to the people where it's not morning. I believe we've morning, afternoon, and evening here.
We have participants from over 25 countries now.
Excellent.
Are we missing Dr. Sina?
Hello, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
There he is. There he is.
My Zoom decided to update itself automatically last minute.
Hello, Dr. Sina. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Saturday. I'm great. This is the last engagement of the week. I cannot wait. It's been busy. Yesterday, Brandon and I had that NPA talk, so it's been a busy week with the commencement, graduation season. Oh my God.
Yes, Brendan had a question. Yeah, the answer is yes, Brendan.
Okay.
We'll give you. I already gave permission to share a screen.
Yep. I see that.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think Ashwin, we can
Should
get
we
it started.
start?
Yeah, for the sake of time, let's.
Panelists, everything is working. Let's start. Yep. So welcome everyone. Warm welcome for joining our panel discussion today. I am Dr. Ashwin Kumar Ganapati. I am a postdoctoral researcher at Pennsylvania State University, Hershey, USA, and I'm also a volunteer at iSTEM Care. And I'll be serving as a moderator in today's event. We have a total registration of over 270 participants from 25 different countries. We are glad that you all have joined. Before we begin, I have few housekeeping slides and a small introduction about iSTEM Care. Yeah, I'm trying to.
Are you able to share the screen, Ashwin?
No. I'll
Alright.
just try one more time.
Okay, no problem. Let me know.
I think I cannot share my screen. I don't know why.
No problem. I'll share from my end and then I'll move slide for you, right?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me a second. I'm just pulling out Google Slides.
mean, it wouldn't be a pandemic webinar if we didn't just have a small technical glitch. It's part of the charm.
Yeah, it's you can plan everything, but
when it starts,
the way the apps long update like regularly, and okay. Just waiting for a few seconds just to check whether I'm pulling right slide before I share the screen. Okay, I think I'm good to go. You should be seeing. Okay, here you go.
Let's start with the housekeeping slide.
Yeah, can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just. This is our slide, so you will see. Okay, let me put into presentation mode. Right. See, everything will come up now. Okay. Right.
I'm sorry for this.
No problem. That's okay. Okay, let's move on. I think there is something coming in between, and it's not allowing me to go to kind of full screen mode. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can go without slides. That's okay.
You can see the screen, right? Can you see the screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep like this. I'll move next slide. Okay. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
All right. Let's get started. Let's move on.
Yeah, so before we move, let's start a small housekeeping slide. Though most of you would have been already aware of this, please mute your microphones, and video and webcams are encouraged but not required. And another important thing is that today's session is being recorded to be available for viewing post-session on our social media platforms. We are broadcasting this on our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions for the panelists, please use the chat feature in the Zoom webinar. Let's go to the next slide. A little info about iSTEM Care. iSTEM Care is a platform created with the goal of building a supportive STEM community in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics worldwide. Our mission statement is sharing is caring. We are a diverse group of professionals in almost all aspects of STEM who sing together to help the community to navigate in their STEM career path more productively. Our ambition is to empower the STEM community across the globe. Yeah, we are moving ahead with this ambition. We'll go to the initiatives. Pawan. We started with various initiatives, starting with webinar, which we slowly shifted now to workshops and STEM professional chats. We are at the end of our first session. The videos of the chat are available in our social platform YouTube channels. This can be helpful for someone who's trying to explore their career opportunities in an uncommon or unconventional career path, like people doing their studies in science and then moving into a law firm and things like that, where we can explore our career pathway in a non-traditional way. Our other initiative is ICTT, Industrial Career Transitioning Training, where a group of participants are helped to how to are like known how to navigate into their career pathway and how to prepare their application, CV, and everything. Our another initiative is a safe space where the participants are encouraged to express their feelings and show and vent out their stress, wherein a scientific community who have already gone through their experience can give their inputs and boost the confidence of the participants. These are the initial few initiatives that we have taken from iSTEM Care, and we are looking ahead to take this further. And then coming to today's panel discussion, this is a part of iSTEM Care series of talks on ICTT. We'll be having a panel discussion today on immigration planning for industry transition. And this time we are restricting it to USA to get a detailed view on work visa and their eligibility criteria. We are extremely grateful for all the panelists today who are joined for the discussion to donate their time and provide their valuable insights and expertise. Also, we are sorry that we could not get a female member on the panel to keep fair representation, and we'll try our best next time. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. And I would request the panelists to introduce themselves briefly for 2 to 3 minutes each for the sake of time. Let's start with Mr. Eric.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for that great intro, Ashwin. My name is Eric Finch. I am currently working as the Director of Immigration Strategy for a legal tech startup called Boundless Immigration. And our business is designed to make the immigration process simpler, primarily at this moment for family-based applicants for immigration benefits. But this world of employment-based, including STEM-based employment applications, is something that I'm very interested in and something that our business is looking closely at as well. Before I joined Boundless Immigration, I was a USCIS adjudicator at the Portland field office in Oregon for 2 years. And prior to that, I was a Department of State Foreign Service officer, primarily working in consular work for 10 years. And I worked in South Korea, multiple places in China, and in Mexico, all doing non-immigrant and immigrant visas, in addition to some work supporting American citizens over there. So I've had a lot of experience in different aspects of the immigration system. I have a lot of sort of insider, perspectives that I'm hoping to share with the group today. And I'm just sort of very excited to be with a group of professionals looking at this part of the immigration system and figuring out ways to make this area more approachable. And I think we'll get into details later, but I just wanted to say quickly that this is a very exciting time to be in this STEM cohort. The Biden administration is looking very closely at this. They've had a number of initiatives very recently that I think have made this part of the process still not where we want it to be, but at least a little bit easier. And you can tell it's really on the administration's mind. And there's a lot of very smart folks at USCIS and in the administration in general who are trying to make this process easier for the folks on this call. So we can talk about that and some of those initiatives later when we get into it. And happy to answer questions. And also just happy to be a resource for any of the folks on this call as we go forward. There's going to be some things that are a little bit probably too detailed to get into today, but let's keep the conversation going and share what we know and try to create a good community here where we can be mutually supporting and help each other. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Dr. Sina.
Sure. Thank you so much to the organizers for the invite. Thanks to the panelists and thanks to everyone joining this session. So I'm Sina Safai, originally from Iran. I have a DVM from there. Left Iran 18 years ago to pursue my PhD, University of Copenhagen, Denmark. Did a couple of postdocs in the United States, moved to Japan for work, came back to the United States. So during my training, as well as in between, I have had like admin roles in universities I've worked in. And as a biomedical scientist by training, I decided to make it a full-time job to become an admin and do research instead of biomedical sciences related topics on now workforce development and global mobility. So I have been like on multiple visas in these different countries, work visas, J1, H1b, etc. Thanks to Brandon Delaney, got my green card, and now like a few months into my US citizenship. And for the last 6 years, a big chunk, if not all of my role, like responsibility at the jobs I had different institutions, has been on career development and coaching, graduate level, MS, PhD, and postdoc level trainees in the United States, including internationals. I have never worked in industry, but I can claim that I managed to successfully coach my trainees, tens, if not a few hundreds, to successfully secure industry jobs, not only in the United States, but also like across the globe. And I consider myself subject matter expert in global mobility and workforce development, particularly in biomedical sciences. And I'll be more than happy to connect with you all after this session. If you have any questions, we might not be able to answer them in this session. Thanks again for the opportunity and looking forward to the next hour.
Thank you, Dr. Sina. Dr. Pawan?
Yeah, thank you, Ashwin, and thank you, Dr. Sina and Eric, for kind introduction. It's great to know both of you. Yeah, so about me, currently I'm working as a scientist at Illumina, kind of developing liquid biopsy test for cancer detection and monitoring. And previous to that, I finished my PhD from Tata Memorial Center, Mumbai, India. Many of you may not know there. So I work again in the genomics field, and then I moved for industry job in India itself. Worked for 2 years, then moved for a postdoc at Washington University in St. Louis School of Medicine in Missouri. And that's where iSTEM care originated. I moved for the postdoc, and I was really not, it was a pandemic time. I joined, and then everything closed down. And, the opportunities go down when everything is closed, right? Especially for international people. So that's where I got into, idea about like starting some organization or some group where we can support people. At the same time, I can learn myself about different aspects beyond research, because as an immigrant, there is a lot of challenges, not just doing lab work, but there is external challenges, internal challenges. So that's where the iSTEM came into being, and we started with a group of friends, and let's start doing something basics and train people, because we go through a lot of cultural changes and a lot of soft skill issues, because we are not trained when we come from non-Europe or non-US background. So iSTEM care has been being very good experience over the last 1.5 years, dedicating time over weekend nights with friends across the world, and we have been the whole idea is to empower people to be able to face the challenges in their career while they're doing their own education or training in biomedical or in STEM in general. And I have been working with a lot of volunteering with a lot of organizations, learning that a lot of focus has been just on maybe US population or Europe, but a lot of other part of the world like South Africa, Asia, and Asia, Middle East is totally left out from connectivity. And that's where we have been trying to outreach to these regions, Asia Pacific, India, and also Middle East and South Africa, right? To have people on board as volunteers, because then they can amplify the efforts and have more people joining. And maybe thanks to pandemic that we could do all this because of virtual nature of the communication nowadays. So I'm very passionate about helping people, empowering people, because of my own struggle I went through, and that's why we have this session today. And thanks to all the panelists. We met over LinkedIn. We are never full-time friends, but that's thanks to them to come on board and give their time, and that encourages me and gives me more energy and spirit to do more work in future. So that's about me. Feel free to connect over LinkedIn or anywhere. Mostly LinkedIn, I'm very active for any help, any suggestion, any cross networking. So that's about me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pawan. Mr. Brandon.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, thanks for attending and thanks for the invitation to be part of this today. I'm going to speak very briefly about myself because I've got a few slides I think that I was asked to sort of put forward to sort of give us a bit of an introduction or to frame the panel discussion. My name is Brendan Delaney. I'm an immigration attorney in the Bethesda, which is in the DC area, close to National Institutes of Health. As Eric alluded to, US immigration has many areas, has many facets. We sort of concentrate, I suppose, working with foreign national scientists and researchers in the STEM arena. So I've had the good opportunity to work with many scientists and researchers over the years, primarily in the self-petitioned applications, EB-1A, extraordinary ability, EB-2, national interest waiver, and then obviously the temporary visas that sort of go along with that. I serve on the advisory council for the National Postdoctoral Association, and I've had the opportunity to speak at their annual meeting on many occasions with my friend and colleague, Sina. So I'm delighted to see him here today also. So thank you again for having me here. And again, as everyone said at the outset, I hope this is going to be sort of the platform and be able to frame a good discussion moving forward for you guys. So if it's okay, I'll share my screen for the next sort of 7-10 minutes, just to give us a platform for the discussion, if that sounds okay.
Yes, Brendan, you can share your screen. And thank you so much, all the panelists, for your kind and quick introduction.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're good? All right.
Yes.
So that's me. And as I believe Eric just alluded to in the chat, this is important. Yes, I'm an attorney. No, this is not legal advice. So just, I want, to be clear to everyone here today, this is for certainly from where I stand. And I believe, again, Eric excellently alluded to that in the chat, that this is not legal advice. And whenever you have a situation, you should consult a professional with regards to your own personal case. So I'm just going to run through the sort of following slides quickly. I think some takeaways for a foreign national approaching this is, let me go back quickly, is to be flexible. I consider this to be a sort of journey in front of you. So be ready to be flexible as you navigate these different sort of visas. It's a little bit like alphabet soup out there. There's a lot of different visas, there's a lot of different options, and there's a lot of different decisions to make. And I think that ultimately you have to sort of recognize that you're going to have short, medium, and long-term goals. With that said, obviously today we're talking about the industry transition. So some of the questions in how to sort of facilitate or navigate that is as follows. Well, which visa is best for you in the sort of temporary time frame that you may be looking at that industry transition? Is it a J1, a H1b? Can you utilize your OPT? What's the best way to sort of do that? What about transferring a J1? As some of you may know, the J1 research scholar visa is very common in an academic situation, an academic circumstance. How does that play into industry? Can it be done? How common is it? Is it difficult? The O1 is obviously a big one. I'm going to talk about that quickly in a moment. And then I suppose ultimately for any foreign national, and if you can sort of tell by my accent, I'm not American either. I'm from Ireland. I'm from the north of Ireland, outside Belfast originally. I've been here about 20 years. The ultimate question is, do you want to be here temporarily or permanently? And that can drive your decisions. Pawan had asked me to talk about briefly the O1 visa in terms of how this sort of plays in to your ability to transition to industry. So what is it? First of all, I think it's important to note that it is an employer-sponsored application. The O1 is not something that you can do yourself. Okay, so you got to be sponsored for this. It's a temporary visa. It's a high standard. You have to show sort of sustained acclaim. You have to be seen to be one of the top of your field. Indicated there, there's no Khazarian test. Eric may want to talk about some of the sort of adjudication aspects of these cases when they go to immigration officers, obviously given his background and experience there. If, for example, you were here in the United States on a J1 and you were subject to the 2-year home residence requirement, you can still get an O1 without getting a waiver. You would have to get the application approved. You would leave the United States, get the visa, and then return. It's also obviously a good option for industry because there's very limited H1Bs available. There's no discernible time limit on O1s, so you can always be there to utilize it. Again, as Eric mentioned at the outset, in January and since then, we have seen additional guidance being published by the Biden administration with deference to STEM. Is it going to matter? How is that going to be applied by USCIS? A couple of notes here with the requirements of the O1 that I've been sort of asked to just mention, again, framing the discussion for everyone moving forward. There's the criteria. And I've tried to sort of put this in a little bit of a traffic light situation for early and mid-career researchers. What we see in green, in my opinion, are the categories that are fairly easy to meet from an objective standpoint. If you have, for example, worked as a peer reviewer for scientific journals, I'm almost going to say this is almost a must-have. You need to get 3 of these categories. So you got to get out there and work as a peer reviewer because objectively speaking, you can then get that category. Similarly, once you have authored scholarly articles in the field, that's a fairly objective category. And if you can meet that, that's, again, a solid argument for your case. The 2 at the top there that are red, those are very difficult to meet under the adjudication standard 401s. You are going to have pretty significant prizes, awards for excellence in the field, and indeed memberships. And then we have the orange. We have the sort of the maybes. Those are a little bit more subjective. Have you made original scientific contributions of major significance? Can you show that you were employed in a critical or essential capacity? So they're a little bit more subjective, as is the high salary. That may be possible depending upon your compensation. So those are the different categories that you're going to want to sort of argue and be able to meet for the O1. And then just at the bottom there, again, a couple of things to sort of, I suppose, know and understand if this is going to be your primary objective to make the industry transition. As I mentioned earlier, this is an employer-sponsored application. They are the ones driving the process here. Again, know and understand, for example, the recent developments, the STEM guidance, etc. And also, I think, go into this with your eyes open and know that it's not an easy standard to meet, especially for early career researchers. So I'm just going to sort of finish with a couple of slides here. Why did this not go forward? There we go. We're going to move into also, I saw already in the chat, self-sponsored green cards. Is this something that you can consider for an industry transition? So first of all, what is it? Well, it's a self-sponsored application. You're the one driving the process. So what are you asking? Just quickly, do I qualify for a green card? Logically, the next step there is, am I qualified? Well, I think it's fair to say you need strong professional credentials. The importance of your work in and of itself is not enough. So what can you do if you want to consider this? Prepare yourself, be ready, and get a full and frank evaluation of your professional research credentials. That's what you need to look at in terms of looking at this. You have extraordinary ability, similar in nature to the O1. The criteria are a little different, but very similar. There is also a second part to the test. Kazarian, you have to show that you're one of the few at the top of your field. Know the difference between the objective and the subjective criteria. And not all the criteria do, in fact, pertain to the sciences. We also have the national interest waiver. It's almost certainly a better alternative for earlier and mid-career researchers. However, nationals of India will know that there are difficulties associated with that because of the visa backlogs. Under this, we're looking more at a sort of cumulative and broad analysis of your overall body of work. But again, mere active publication and presentation in and of itself is not going to be enough. Publication, presentation, dissemination is inherent in your profession, okay? So you're going to need to do that anyway. It's substance. Substance is going to carry the day. Important to note the difference here. You are the one driving the process. You need to show continuation in your field. You are not tied to any one employer, okay? You got to show your intent to continue working in your field in the United States. One important thing to note here is that you do not have to be physically present in the United States to file these applications, okay? You can apply from overseas. And ultimately, as and when it's approved by USCIS, you can ultimately transition to the United States with a green card. So even if you have to leave, even if you're actually physically located outside the United States, you can still pursue this option. Finally, we have sort of transitional and non-traditional careers. I think generally speaking, many years ago, the self-sponsored applications were more aligned with academic career paths, but now industry, entrepreneurial, it's the application of your scientific knowledge that will drive the conversation and drive the day. So I'm going to go back. I know that was a quick sort of run through, but again, I hope it's sort of given us the framework for sort of moving forward for the discussion. So I will going to mute myself and now give it back to the moderators, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan, for so elegantly introducing the topic by your presentation and setting up the base for the panel discussion. Without much delay, let's get into the questions and start the discussion. Before that, I would like to thank all the attendees for providing your questions and concerns in advance during the registration. We have sorted them out and we'll be addressing as many as we can during this panel. This panel will also be open for later discussion for your direct questions, and you can ask directly using the chat box. So let's start with the first question. What is actually meant by immigration planning, and what are all the key aspects of it? Let's start with Dr. Sina.
So I want to emphasize again that I know myself as a subject matter expert in career planning. Any legal or immigration related topics, I'm not an expert. Of course, like the other two panelists are experts, but again, they had also a legal disclaimer, etc. So when it comes to immigration, visa is something, but career planning is something else. Having visa status or immigration status or a green card doesn't necessarily translate into having a job. And if you don't have a job, that immigration, whatever status you're on, after a while becomes meaningless. So what you need to do in parallel and even proactively before, because they go hand in hand, is to develop or improve your portfolio in a way that you can justify your hiring. Why like an American employer should hire me, a baldy Iranian with all the stereotypes, in United States versus an American? What do I have to offer? What differentiates me from other candidates? So I think being proactively mindful of career planning would not only help with the immigration process and building that portfolio for NIW or O1 or even H1b, but also helps you to secure better options down the road. So I stop here, but I have way more to elaborate as we go along with the questions.
Mr. Eric, what are your thoughts on immigration planning and its key aspects?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, right? Because you, as an academic or as a highly accomplished professional, you are really focused on your career, expanding your knowledge, building your network. And, you know, I think a lot of folks, for a lot of folks, immigration planning is a bit of a blind spot. You sort of cross your fingers and hope that an opportunity will present itself at the right time. But I think, you know, it's also a blind spot for a lot of American academics, you know, that they don't have to worry about this part of the process while working alongside so many brilliant folks from overseas. So, yeah, I do think this is a great conversation and really important, and people should start thinking about this early. You know, another factor I think for a lot of folks is that STEM jobs tend to be, you know, I wouldn't say everywhere, but, you know, sort of plentiful and available for folks who are highly accomplished at the level of postgraduate education. And also that STEM OPT for a lot of the folks just entering in their career lasts a bit longer than OPT does for other fields. So people feel like they have a little bit of extra time, but what they don't understand is that the immigration system, you know, is sort of deeply broken in the United States, and that things that, you know, from an intuitive perspective would happen quite quickly stretch out, you know, the actual process can stretch out for multiple years. So I think in all cases, I would always be thinking a year or two ahead, like where am I going to go when you're looking at career opportunities or programs that you want to participate in, like what kind of timeline does this give me? Where is the next step and what am I doing right now to prepare for that? And this can be as big as job offers, but also can be as small as just making sure that you have all the appropriate paperwork that you're going to need the next time you file your application. I know from working in the system for a long time and also doing a lot of these immigration steps for my wife and other friends, assisting friends and family, that like one thing that can hold people up is just not being prepared for the actual like documentary requirements, and that is something that, especially if you're waiting on a foreign birth certificate or something like that, can, introduce a sort of delay at like a really critical step where you would really like, to be able to move more quickly, right? And it really does come down to the day for a lot of folks. You have a status, there's a date, there's a time that that will expire and needs to be updated, and you really want to have your affairs in order at the moment where you need to take that step. So I would say yes, immigration planning should be a key element of the sort of overall career planning, and for academic folks, figuring out what the steps are going to be in your academic career as well.
Dr. Pawan, your thoughts on immigration planning?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sina and Eric, for kind of setting the background. So maybe I'll speak about my experience rather than giving in general. So when I moved for postdoc, fortunately I was aware that there is a challenge, and as everybody said, before you even get into you are getting into PhD. If you are doing PhD in US, then you have OPT, right? Like you have certain amount of years you can be happily working. Maybe after OPT you may work on J1 or you are gonna work on H1, be academic. But for someone moving straight into postdoc in the United States, one has to be aware of a lot of challenges, especially if you are Indian nationals. Like the waiting list is long, right? I knew. Second thing, that J1 waiver takes now 2 years almost because of pandemic. Like it's not easy as opposed to earlier, right? And so I straight went into H1b academic. I negotiated with my mentor that I want H1b because otherwise I have to wait for some time before I transition anywhere. So that was, I think, the first conscious step I took. And then once I moved in, I started, as everybody was saying, like evaluating my profile with lawyers or immigration firm about what I lack, right? And I think most of postdocs, speaking with other people, they don't do it. They just think that, I'll do when I need to do. So this is one of the very critical aspects that I think everybody should get evaluated with lawyers or immigration firm about their profile. Whether you're gonna do application or not, it doesn't matter, but at least you are aware of that, what is lacking, and work on those pointers which experts share, that please work on building your relationship with people who can write letters for you. Publication will be natural because you can't create publications. You have to work for certain years, right? But doing other volunteering work, as Eric and Brendan were talking, that research you can do, but a lot of other aspect of requirements, like whether you are in expert in certain committees, whether you are externally exposed to various board members, you are reviewing enough articles for journals, right? And whether you have a good connection, a strong connection with big people who can write letters for you in your area of research, right? And these takes maybe years to build the relationship with people, and this comes under immigration planning. And as everybody said, one should start doing at least 2 years in advance before you decide to file. It takes time, and therefore one has to consciously work on it, spend time. It's not going to happen automatically. It will never happen automatically. so that was my mindset, and that's what I think is very critical to get evaluated with the immigration form, start working on those inputs, and get your profile ready. It doesn't matter whether you get approval or not. That's not in your hand, but at least you tried it, you did it. If you're not successful, you are prepared to go back to your home country. But if you're successful, then it's great, right? So that's what my thought process when I was kind of planning about my immigration.
Mr. Brendan, you can give your inputs on that.
Yeah, thanks. And I think, as everyone alluded to previously, it's hugely important. As foreign nationals in the United States, not only are you dealing with your actual positions, Sina previously, spoke maybe some of the cultural adjustment that you're dealing with, but then you got to deal with the visas and the immigration. One of the things that I would say is that, I think it's important to talk to your peers and talk to your colleagues and get information, but also remember that this is not a one-size-fits-all answer. Not everyone is going to navigate this in the same way. For example, as you leave your postdoc, you get your OPT, you get your STEM extension. If you're in academia, you get a J1 research scholar visa, and then potentially you transition to a H1b. That's up to 14 years of temporary visa that you can utilize and harness to build the type of platform that you need to get to the steps and where you want to need to be. So I think making informed decisions about your own personal and professional situation is very important. So yes, absolutely, talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues, but also remember what's best for you. And as I think Eric alluded to, get your paperwork in order at the right times. The processing times at USCIS these days are not only lengthy, but they're also very frustrating and they're very inconsistent. So you're going to find the friend, you're going to find the colleague that says, oh, I got my case filed and approved in 6 months. I'll find you the friend and colleague it took 16 months. So just temper, as you navigate this. I've seen a few questions in the chat about, for example, either continuing to use H1Bs or moving on to EADs. And I think in some of the answers rather, I saw that Eric alluded to, again, the H1B is a great visa to be able to continue to work and travel on while you're pursuing a green card, whether that's employment, family-based, or whatever. I'll say one other thing. As you navigate this potentially towards a self-petitioned application, I think to get your sort of ducks in a row, you don't want to go to the well too early. And I think, as Pawan noted, you want to go with a solid and strong application. And ultimately, that's where you want to be. And I will say one final thing. The United States does recognize the importance of science and the importance of research in the immigration context. There are many millions of highly qualified foreign nationals in the United States who may not have the same pathways that are open to you guys. So I think if you learn about the process, and I think if you inform yourself and if you get yourself ready, you can get to where you need to be and you can navigate this successfully. I truly believe that.
Thank you, panelists, for enlightening us with the timeline and being on top of our paperworks. Our next question is basically the elephant in the room. What are the basic eligibility criteria and bottleneck for O1 visa? And how long does it take to prepare prepare and apply for O1 visa? Let's start with Mr. Eric.
So yeah, I was just going to respond to a couple of the O-related questions in the chat. There's a lot of interest in this O world right now. And just to give a little bit of a history, so the O visa has traditionally been looked at as something that's like fairly hard to obtain, even for postdocs and other advanced academics. And a lot of the popular conception of the O visa is more around athletes, entertainers, supermodels. That I think famously, former President Trump's wife was a O visa recipient during her modeling days. So yeah, it's kind of a blind spot. I think there's a lot of hesitancy for people to approach this category, feeling that the bar is quite high. Obviously, there's some services and legal professionals out there who can demystify that, and that's why I think that is a lot of value add where you can learn more about things from people who have successfully navigated this process. Because like all processes that involve the U.S. government and the federal immigration bureaucracy, there is a formula, right? Like there's some folks sitting in a service center somewhere who are looking at all these O visa petition submissions, and they have like non-published, like probably frequently evolving but somewhat discernible criteria for what they're looking for. So the other thing I would like to mention about O visas is that this is a category that I think has seen some retrenchment in the last couple of years, and this is also why the administration is looking at new ways to inspire people to get into this process and clarify the process for them. I think I looked at the numbers not too long ago, and they were up into the 12 to 15,000 issued per year range coming into like the early Trump administration, and since that time they've dropped. The O visa issuance has dropped back down into like the low four digits, like 3,000-4,000 a year. So that tells you what was a pretty strong upward trend until the Trump administration is, and I think this is true of a lot of categories due to COVID and other external factors. But so I mentioned that because I think there's the administration is really looking at the O category as an area where we can make some strong gains in a relatively short amount of time if we sort of engage people and clarify our process and open the door for more submissions. And the O visa has a number of advantages, right? It's technically a non-immigrant visa, but it allows you to work. There's no caps. You can use premium processing to get your petition approved relatively quickly. And once you have a petition in hand, you can appear at the consulate or embassy where you apply for your visa, get a visa, come over with relatively low barriers for entry. And then the visa, in most cases, depends on reciprocity for individual countries, but it lasts, up to 3 years, and it's fairly easy to renew if you're in the same employer relationship or agent relationship that you were at the time that you applied. So yeah, there's a number of folks who live in the United States for years or decades on O status. But like the TN and other sort of low barrier to entry employment-based visas, it becomes a little bit of a pain when you want to move across different fields, different occupations. That requires in some cases or in many cases a separate application. So yeah, I'm happy to get into a little bit more detail with the O's, and having not handled one myself in the last like 3 or 4 years, I probably am a little bit behind on the specific requirements. But yeah, I think that's a good high level way to look at the O category and think about like whether that would be something that you wanted to get involved with applying for.
Mr. Brendan, what is the basic eligibility criteria to get the O1, and what are all the bottlenecks for obtaining it?
Well, I think in the slide, and I guess this is being recorded, so you've got access to the slides that I had provided. I think looking at the different criteria, I think it's important to sort of look at where you as an individual applicant may stand in terms of your professional research background or industry-based background. I mean, again, it's an employer-sponsored application. So sometimes I will field questions about this. Oh, well, can I go and do this O1? Well, do you have an employer to sponsor you? Because you're going to need that. Now, obviously, as has been mentioned, over the past number of years, it's become a more attractive option. This has really come to pass because of the fact that I think it's fair to say, I mean, I've been working with the NPA, National Postdoctoral Association, for a number of years. And I think it's fair to say that over the last sort of 10 plus years, the idea of sort of traditional academic careers, it has clearly exploded into an industry component. But the H1b visa has not necessarily kept up with that. So H1Bs, we've got 85,000 each year. And 20 years ago, when I was looking for a H1b visa from Ireland, that was okay. There were H1Bs available for everyone. That's not the case anymore. I mean, we're getting 300 plus thousand H1Bs being applied for each year. So you've got maybe a 1 in 3 chance, maybe a 1 in 4 chance of getting selected for the lottery. So therefore, what is industry to do? Well, they're going to harness the O1. And so therefore, that's why we're seeing more applications. And that's why it's a much more attractive option to make the industry transition on a temporary visa. But again, as Eric alluded to, it's not an easy visa. It's a high-level visa. It's called extraordinary ability for a reason. Now, in January, the Biden administration has published guidance, STEM guidance, which we would hope, and again, Eric, maybe you can chime in here a little bit that, when guidance is published, how does the adjudicators apply that guidance? I am actually in the middle of an O1 for a university who shall remain nameless, that unfortunately, we feel the adjudicator did not apply that guidance, even though the application was filed post-guidance. So we've had to respond and essentially say, listen, with all due respect, you're incorrect in your adjudication of the evidence because this application was filed in February. And with this new STEM guidance, my hope is that the O1 will become a more doable and gettable application for more people. But I think we have to wait and see how this guidance will actually be applied by individual officers.
Dr. Pawan, your thoughts on O1 visa and the major bottlenecks. You can also talk about your experience on that.
Yeah, so I think they already covered, but just to clarify about as everybody said, O1 visa is sponsored by your employer, right? So I think before and also O1 visa has a lot of limitation as compared to H1 visa. I learned recently, so O1 visa is not a dual intent visa. Okay, it's more of a job visa. So if you're trying to moving in other your home country in between when you're filing your green card or anything, it may have limitations. So but in general, O1 visa is very helpful for someone who has PhD. I think most of time that's one of the main criteria that you're extraordinary, and then on the top of it, you have to identify the area of research where you want to kind of build your profile, because you cannot be just saying I'm a cancer researcher or I am a biologist or I'm a bioinformatics. You have to be very specific when you are trying to build your profile in the area. So you have to be like, in my case, I had to be a specific. I'm a researcher in oncology, in biomarker area, and especially developing diagnostics tests, right? So you have to go deep into the specifics, and that's where the challenge comes. And most of time, it is sponsored by industries, but it can be also sponsored by your academic, your lab, your PI agrees. It requires money. There is a cost involved with it, and that's why not everybody gets ready to sponsor you unless and until they are intended to hire you for long term in the position. Your wife still cannot work on O3 visa. If you're thinking a dependent cannot work, so be mindful of that. EAD process is still challenging for your partner if they want to work, and in general, the O1 visa is, I won't say it's simpler as in general we hear, but the preparation and the planning, if it is done properly, especially the letters from people, you can get letters from people who are you are working with. So you may need around 5-7 letters in general, but you need an independent letter from experts in the area who can vouch and write for you. And that's the most challenging part of the whole process, whether it's O1 or green card. If you're thinking that your lawyer is going to do all your work, not going to happen, because they are not expert in your area. So you have to prepare and be able to write letters, a draft for your lawyer, so that they can work, because they are not expert in your area of research, and many times the mistakes go in there. So if you're thinking that you can do suddenly, it's not going to happen. It takes months to drafting letters, working with your lawyer. And so I would say start thinking about area of research, and O1 requires these writing a lot of letters, kind of writing your profile. And once you prepare for O1, I think you have done your 70% of your work for green card application, because the similar content goes in there within some additional evidences to support in different way of cover letters and other things. I did both. That's why I'm able to speak, because I was working with my lawyer with company sponsored, so they had an own immigration team, but I was working with my personal lawyer who was working with me on my green card. So you can do, to build your own profile. I would say it doesn't harm that you invest some money to start filing petition for NIW if you are in, third year, fourth year of your postdoc, or you're finishing your PhD and you think that you have, there is no number of citation, but I think it's around 300, 400 is good enough if it is in your area of research where you are trying to build your profile for your visa. So, but the challenges I already described. There is no number of year of limit, but there is, your partner still cannot work. All you basically, essentially, you get a job, but the whole H1b criteria is almost similar in O1. So after you get a visa, your in general, on ground status is not gonna super different than the H1b or J1, but except that you are confident that your profile is good for green card, and you may be confident. So I think I hope I answered the question, but I think I got some distraction in between. So I think I'll hand over to Dr. Sheena, who has more experience than me, to kind of describe the situation. Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I'm learning from all the panelists. It's great to have this conversation.
Sina, sorry not to interrupt. Do you mind if I share my screen? I can just bring up the O visa requirements.
Sure.
And then that way you can look at it there. Go ahead.
Oh, you want me to talk? You want me to talk, Brandon? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Can,
I just felt,
okay.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
while you can have a look at the visa requirements, I'll talk about the topic. So let's look at the big picture. Why 60% of postdocs in the United States are internationals? Think of where you come from and where you come to. Let's say I'm from Iran. I come from a country where there is a dictatorship. The economy is shitty. If you're not affiliated with the government, you are considered as a second-class citizen. Coming to the United States, free country, democracy, better than other parts of the world, but an unleashed capitalism. What is unleashed capitalism, right? So I have a choice here. Either I say, okay, $40,000 postdoc, H1b, J1, or going to industry, just they sponsor my visa, O1, or whatever. Just I make whatever I make is more than like what I could make in India, in Iran, and I don't know, like Colombia. So it is better to be a second-class citizen in the United States than in my home country. Is it your choice, or your choice is not? No, I'm in the United States, so I should have like an American mindset and say that I deserve to be treated equally rather than being treated as a cheap labor, the modern slavery in 21st century, right? So you have a choice, either like come here as a servant, a third-class citizen, or develop a niche in a way that like you become indispensable, like they do anything for you to sponsor your visa. I have like folks, employers spend $20,000, $30,000 just like to keep them, to bring them here to the United States for O1. Think long-term, as Brandon mentioned, like what is your career plan? Like I see most folks focus on, oh, I have an OPT, I'm secured for 2 years. Oh, I have a J1, I'm secured for 2 years. What is your goal? Do you want to go back to a home country? Do you want to go global, or do you want to stay in the United States? If you look at NSF data, I put it in chat for those of you who didn't read. If you look at NSF data, until you're naturalized, if you're on visa, you make 20 to 40%, depending on whether you're on green card or on temporary visa, 40% less than Americans in doctoral level workforce in the United States, right? That's discrimination, that's wrong, but that's the way it is. That's why I say it's unleashed capitalism. You're not treated equally unless you solve your visa problems. But visa problem or challenge should be addressed in a mindful way. You want to stay here, you go beyond temporary status, go beyond what you can achieve now. Look how you can plan mindfully to develop a strong portfolio for a long-term plan, to get to that naturalized situation faster, because that's your ticket to be treated as an American. And if you look at stats, naturalized immigrants make significantly more than American-born like doctoral level workforce. You want to get to that level as fast as possible. Also, when it comes to like building a portfolio, like when you go like during like your postdoc or even now, your tickets are networking. What you know, everybody else does. Like everybody like has a PhD, publications, citations, etc. And you more or less, if you have a PhD publications, you're gonna get your like some status like J1, the H1, 01, NIW, etc. What matters is like whether your portfolio is good enough to secure a good job, rather than like a third-class citizen job, a cheap labor, right? So I'm pushing it one step further than just like a visa, because at the end of the day, when you go to networking events, when now like you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's the best way to do. You have like all of you have your cameras turned off. Other than 2 or 3 of you that I know in person, the rest of you, I will not remember who you are. So I forget, like if I don't see your faces, I forget you. And any of us, faculty in the United States, subject matter experts like Eric and Brandon, we get tens, if not hundreds of emails per week. So if I see your face, if I see your good question, I remember you. And instead of like, I have to be mindful of my time. So I spend my time on those because for me, it's not business, it's passion. I do pro bono stuff. So and so do so many of the faculty. You need their reference letter and support for your application. So be mindful the way you approach folks. Oh, do you have a job? I received zillion emails. Oh, do you have a job? Copy paste from India, Iran particularly. I'm not stereotyping, I'm just sharing the facts. From our own country and also like India particularly. They're like, hey, do you have a job? Do you have an opening? Without even reading about my profile, research interests, and what I can offer. Copy paste, obvious. Informational interviews, make yourself familiar with what informational interview is. Hey, Sina, how did you get where you got? What would you have done differently? What you know today, when you're an American citizen after 18 years of being on multiple visas, back then when you were like me, a postdoc, let's say in South Korea, right? Or a PhD student in India. What would you have done differently? What can I do now? What's your advice? What can I do now to proactively improve my portfolio if my goal is to come and stay in the United States for like 10 years? Or no, I might want to keep the door open, want to like immigrate to the United States and become an American citizen down the road. What are my best options? Because pursuing one option or whatever is available is not wise, because we get this life a number of years, particularly between the age 20 to 30, or let's say 35, not to disappoint some of you. That's the best age you can like utilize, work your ass off, 80, 100 hours a week to build a portfolio, to enjoy harvesting what you seed during this time after age 40, 45 until after your retirement. So do not waste the most precious years of your life by just like looking at 1 feet, 3 feet away, or in international metrics, like 3-4 meters away. Look at the horizon. Where do you want to get? And ask those who have got there and subject matter experts, what is the best way for me to get to that address? rather than, oh, what's the best way of me jumping over this small obstacle of like a PhD, like, oh, I have a PhD, I have OPT, oh my God, I'm gonna get a job. You cannot imagine how many folks I know that for the sake of visa sponsorship, they accepted 40, 50% like less salary in industry versus their American counterparts, or those foreign-borns who have become naturalized or have like citizenship. And it's a domino effect. Your first salary would have an impact for you, like for the rest of your career, because so many folks ask you, oh, what was your salary? Okay, you're going to increase it for 20%. It will take you so many years to catch up. One last point. Do not think that doing a postdoc will help you. Unless you want to pursue a tenure track faculty appointment in the United States or elsewhere, if you want to stay in the United States and want to pursue a job or career other than tenure track faculty, it will take you 10 to 15 years to financially, salary-wise, catch up with those who pursued those career paths without doing a postdoc. So again, 1 year in postdoc, you're hurting yourself for about $1 million financial loss. So, and I'm happy to answer other questions when it comes to career planning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Sina. Maybe I can
Yeah.
just add to some points he mentioned, like the decision. It's a hard decision for immigrant. First of all, let's agree that it's not easy to decide what exactly you want to do after 5-10 years, right? But I think one has to. I realize that one has to decide. Even if it's hard, one has to decide at some point that where I want to go, and that's where the whole decision-taking process gets started. And definitely, visa is costly in US. So therefore, when you get an offer, you don't need visa or you need visa. It's a part of your offer. So basically, you do get less money. And as a immigrant and an international foreign immigrant, we have to kind of move cities, right? So that has a cost, right? Because you want someone to sponsor, which is a rare. It's not all companies are ready to sponsor, as somebody mentioned in the chat. So, but there is a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of companies who requires talent, and if you have that talent and they need you, then they will surely go extra way and sponsor you. And that's where we have to find out that who is that right person or right employer who is gonna support you. But once you have an employer, and so they take care of all the costs, so you don't have to put your money in that process. Especially for O1, I can say H1 is hard, and that's another. It's a lottery. It's your luck, so you really don't know, like when you get it and when you don't get. Sorry. So let's move on to next one, Ashwin.
Yeah, a quick question to Mr. Brendan and Mr. Eric. Yes, O1 is a sponsored visa, but can we do a preparation by ourselves for an O1 application so that it can appeal the companies for a job? And how different it is than preparing for a green card?
Well,
yeah.
Brendan, you want to go first, or?
Sure. I mean, let me just say, I'll come at this from two angles. Okay. First of all, I think, as I noted on the slide that I brought back up there that people could see, an O1 visa is an employer-sponsored application. Okay. So you have to think about who's driving the bus. And at the end of the day, it's the employer who is driving the bus in terms of an O1 visa application. They have to commit to offering you employment. Now, the second part of this is, can you qualify? Okay. And that is going to be on you. There's a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot of evidence, documentation, and material to gather, which, depending upon the employer, they may say, okay, listen, you do all that, you get all that to us, and we'll file it. So there, again, there's going to be different scenarios how it may play out. But if your question is, can I do this by myself without an employer? The answer is no. The H1b, which is a different type of visa for artists, entertainers, and I don't know if anybody has a side gig, like being an artist and entertainer. If you want to, you can go do an H1b and you can get an agent and you can essentially do that. Essentially, it's not self-employment, but it's close to that. That is not the case in an H1A. And you got to be very clear about this, because I feel these questions a lot. Can I do this myself? No, you need an offer of employment. They may put the heavy lifting on you to gather all the material to structure the case, but they will file it. They are the ones driving the bus. So you got to understand that. Now, I'll just finish, and then Eric, if you want to chime in. There is a lot of overlap, and I think as Pawan noted as well, there's a lot of overlap between an O1 and a green card in terms of the standard of adjudication. So what you have to bring to the table is remarkably similar. There's a difference inherently in that the O1A is a employer-sponsored application for a temporary position. You want to process a green card, that's a self-sponsored application for permanent residence. And there are the differences there, but again, a lot of overlap in terms of what you need to bring to the table.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Brendan said. And I think, like, from a general perspective, like the number of successful DIY filers for an EB2, NIW, an O1 of any sort, any of the EB1 like category, like probably less than 1%. Like if I had to put a number on it, it's really, really difficult for somebody, leaving aside, like even if your employer, like I said, yes, you need an employer sponsor for O1A. I think it comes up with NIWs a lot, where people are like, well, can I sort of put this together myself? Like I have all these things, and it's really, really hard. And the reason why is because going back to something that Brendan mentioned before is, adjudicators at USCIS don't generally have a lot of discretion. And when I say discretion, I mean their ability to sort of decide, based on their own judgment, whether something like meets a criteria or follows a law or regulation. So, in the family-based context, think of it like this. Like if you marry somebody and you apply for, you file an I-130 and you go, like all USCIS is really trying to do is just, with the petition is like, are you actually married? And that's what they look at. And it's pretty easy to prove, right? And if you are married, the adjudicator doesn't have the discretion to deny your application. Now there's other things like fraud and other things that they look at. But so I think in the context of what we're talking about, and as it relates to O1As, this is one area where like they do have like some degree of discretion, not in a legal sense, like they're still looking for specific things and certain criteria, but it gets a little fuzzy around the edges when we're talking about, and exactly what a lot of people are asking about in chat, like the strength of the evidence and things that you're submitting. And just to kind of put it plainly, like the people who have the best insight into this are folks like attorneys who have done a significant number of these applications, and they're able to then sort of compare and contrast. Like, the USCIS it's a black box. Nobody can reach inside there and understand exactly what they're looking at and thinking at and how they are evaluating things. I have some perspective because I've been exposed to it a little bit, but even that is a sort of it has an expiration date. I mean, those regulations change, without being privy to the updates and things that the guidance that they're giving to adjudicators. Even I don't really know how they're looking at evidence or how they're weighting things or how many pieces of X they want to see in certain types of applications. So yeah, not to put too fine a point on it, but I think that having a legal professional advise you and getting the benefit of their experience is really critical for all of these types of applications. And failing that, or in addition to that, a group like this where you could compare notes and understand what other folks have experienced going through this process is also another good resource, right? Because the only way that you're going to be able to understand how these things are looked at is by hearing the sometimes subjective experience of other folks who've gone through the same process. So I just kind of want to like put a fine point on that discretion element. You like Brendan said, sometimes you feel like you have a pretty good handle on what you need and what you should want to submit, and you still get an RFE or you get some kind of follow-up from the USCIS. They're notorious for doing this, and for that reason, it's important to kind of flood the zone and make sure that you are hitting all the different points in as effective a manner as possible. And then, be ready to pivot and respond effectively to the inquiries and updates that they're making, and try to also read between the lines. Like, what are they really looking for? Because despite the fact that like we tend to get tied up and caught up in this idea that like you need X, Y, and Z, X pieces of evidence, this, that, and the other, like what they're really trying to do is make a holistic evaluation of whether you meet the overall criteria. And, a successful O application in particular, there's a reason why they don't spend a lot of calories at USCIS worrying about approving Justin Bieber's O1, or, I'm making stuff up, but, there are entertainers and celebrities in this world who clearly meet this standard without really any evidence at all. And those people, you sail through this process with minimal issues. So I think it becomes difficult for academics because your average USCIS adjudicator or State Department consular officer does not understand or know the value of what a high-level academic is doing. I used to deal with this all the time with administrative processing for visas, right? Where, we would be presented a list of papers and published works and honestly have no clue. Like, I'm not a high-level physicist or a biologist. I don't know what the significance of these papers and research is. So I think that's another call to action for the folks on this call is be ready to understand and talk and help the agency interpret what you know. You may have a sense of where you land in the hierarchy of your profession and academic field, but help, figure out a way to help them understand that. And that's why awards come into play. That's why conference attendance. That's why visibility, published works, magazine articles, other forms of recognition, that helps them understand and get a window into your world and understand where you stand in it. And that could be very important for these extraordinary ability type applications. All right, so sorry, I know that was a lot. But...
Do you mind if I just add to that? Because there's some very good points that Eric made in terms of from the USCIS standpoint. And I'm just going to add to that from a sort of a legal professional standpoint. And for you guys, as you navigate this, make sure that you work with someone, A, who you're both personally and professionally comfortable with, and B, I think as important or more importantly, who knows this area, okay? Because as Eric mentioned, US and US immigration is a broad range of different types of applications. And sometimes people will come to me and I will say, you know what? I'm not the best person to help you. I stay in my lane. And so if you come to me and I talk about an extraordinary ability application, national interest waiver application, and a O1 application, that's my comfort zone. And whoever you work with, there's a lot of good immigration lawyers out there. There's a lot. But there are also certain instances where you may talk to someone who says, yeah, I can do this for you, but that may not be their forte. You may be a biomedical engineer. You might not know too much about the physicists, vice versa. So when you file these applications, it is vitally important that the organization, structure, and preparation of the evidence is done in the strongest possible manner for your case. And again, as something Eric alluded to, US immigration officers, and he'll know way more about this than I do, they work off what's called the Adjudicators Field Manual. This gets updated from time to time with regards to cases. So for example, right now on my desk, because I've been working on an O1 recently, I have volume 2 and volume 4, which talks about what they are supposed to look at in terms of evaluating and adjudicating evidence. And that's important for your case, because again, as Eric mentioned, it's how you structure that argument to enable the immigration officer to not just look at the evidence sort of wishy-washy, but how that argument is structured, take them by the hand and say, this is why you need to approve this case. And there is a lot of discretion in O1s, as I mentioned in that slide. But that's important as you navigate these applications, they're very specialized. So I just wanted to add to,
Yeah, since we had a lot of discussion on O1, let's zoom out a little and let's go to the basics. Like, what are the visa options that one have to enter into the industry or transition from postdoc or postdoc to an industry point of view? So what the visa options we have? Let's start with Dr. Sina.
Just to add, I think Ashwin, I think there have been a lot of question about or confusion about can J1 can go for industry. So I think people, panelists can add to that also when responding. Thank you.
This is absolutely outside of like my area of expertise, but there was a question which makes it relevant to all these visa options. How to build a reviewer portfolio. Like so many have questions like how could they review for journals? I'm currently academic editor for +1, and I always have a hard time finding reviewers, right? So if you have published, reach out to the editors of the journal you already have published in, or other relevant journals in your field, and ask them, hey, how could I add my info as a potential reviewer to the journal? I'll be more than happy to add you to +1, but it's your responsibility to reach out to the relevant academic editor. The other way to go about it is to ask for the faculty you're working with. They usually have like editor or reviewer roles. How I started as a PhD student like a zillion years ago was that like my PI, my faculty, my mentor, PhD mentor, sent me a review which was sent to them to do my first review as a mentor's review, to learn how to review a paper, right? That's a part of like PhD training. If you don't know that, ask for mentorship, how to do it, because if you submit a bad review, editors would not invite you back to review. So be mindful to submit a good review because you're competing as a reviewer with like best folks in the world. And at the end of the day, to my understanding, you can get letters from those journals or those editors that you have reviewed, like as a subject matter expert in those fields, which could not only help you with your NIW 01, but also on your CV and portfolio for potential jobs and jobs needing other types of work visas, H1 or J1.
Mr. Brendan, what are the visa options one have for entering into the industry or transition from J1 and H1b CapEx? Can they work in the industry, and what are the other visa options one has?
Yeah, so I think it's important to sort of let me just share my screen alongside again. So I'll bring up this sort of slide. So here's what we're looking at from a sort of perspective of what you can do, what you can utilize in terms of the visa options. So let me bring this across here. So the main visa options for an industry transition are as follows. After your postdoc, you're going to get your F1, your OPT, and then you can utilize a 2-year STEM extension. And I think that's one of the areas or timelines is when you're going to sort of make a decision. People have been mentioning the J1. I think traditionally or historically, maybe historically is the wrong word, but traditionally the J1 research scholar visa was very heavily weighted for academia. And it's a very sort of heavily utilized visa in an academic sense. The State Department essentially designates J1 visa issuing entities. So you don't even have to go to immigration, which is probably not a bad thing. The university issues the DS 2019, so they can sort of control the narrative. So in an academic sense, J1 visas have always been very commonly utilized. I don't have the figures, but I think it's fair to say, broadly speaking, I'm going to generalize a little bit, that I have seen a lot more industry-based J1 programs over the last few years. So some of big pharma and some of the big industry research organizations have sort of now harnessed the J1, but it's definitely still more limited than in an academic setting. So you've got your OPT, you've got your STEM, you've got your J1, and then the H1b. The H1b in academia is always there. It's always there. So industry, you got to enter the lottery. And essentially, and I think as has been alluded to previously, over the last 15 years, 10 to 15 years, it's simply been oversubscribed. So it can become problematic. Then you've got the O1. Now, these are the options to essentially make an industry transition. One thing I would just sort of caution people about a little bit is that if you make the jump to industry earlier, say on your O1 or your OPT, excuse me, your OPT or your STEM extension, you may be, depending upon what area you're in, you may be negating your ability to get a J1 because it may not be available in an industry setting. You may also then, or you will also then likely be having to enter the H1b Lottery. And I just, at the MPA conference, an individual came up to me after and he said, that's what I did. And I missed out on the lottery 3 years in a row. And we've had to go straight to O1 and I'm struggling with it. So again, as I sort of mentioned right at the introduction at the outset here, this is not a one size fits all answer. Yes, talk to your peers, but also know thyself. Make the decisions what is best for you. And again, as I'm going to stop the share and I will go back. But as I sort of mentioned, I think at the outset when I talked is be ready to be flexible, but also recognize as a foreign national, what are your short, medium, and long-term considerations? Okay, because the visas are there, and I get it. Sometimes the position that is on offer to you will be so attractive that you want to make that jump immediately. And that is it, but that's a personal and professional decision for you to make. Or you can play the long game. And I'm not here to say what's right or what's wrong because it can be different for different people. But those are, in my opinion, those are the different options from a visa standpoint that are on the table.
So if I can add something, financial restrictions as a PhD student or postdoc, it's so hard, particularly if you're outside the United States and you want to spend dollars in hiring an attorney or applying, that's a hard decision. I had like some questions in private direct questions in the chat that I thought it would be helpful if I share my story. Like the first time I came to United States, I chose like a wrong attorney who was not expert in like NIW, and my application got rejected simply because like he was not the best. And it got me so disappointed that I waited for a few years. It's like, hey, I need to find an employer to sponsor my work visa, and then through that, I'm gonna get my green card. That's how arrogant I was at the time. But 6 years of postdoc, and I'm like, I'm still a postdoc. I published 3 papers a year. I was co-PI on $1.5 million grants sponsored by industry as well as like academia. I was leading postdoc association at Iowa State University. I founded Midwest Postdoctoral Forum. Since 2010, 11, like for over 10 years, I have been like volunteering for national postdoc associations. I was doing whatever an employer dreams of a postdoc to do. And I was seeing like those who have green cards or have like citizenship with 1/10 of my qualifications get offers and jobs, and I'm not hearing back. 2,000 job applications, I got one offer over like a span of last 2 years of my postdoc, and that was in Japan. And I'm like, screw this, I'm gonna go where they give me a job. But then I thought, okay, so I was $20-something thousand negative on my credit cards, and I'm like, oh my God, what should I do? Become a permadoc? There is a Nature publication on that, permanent postdoc, or do something about it, right? Because the ticket is like solving your immigration stuff. So I took a loan, considering that I'm gonna pay off monthly payments off of the loan. So I took a loan more than what I needed to pay my attorney, right? To like give me enough of gap for like 1-2 years that I'm not worried about repayment of the loan. I paid my attorney and it paid off down the road. Why? Because if you secure a job a few months faster, or secure a job because of your NIW and with a higher payment, it all pays off. And I'm glad I did so. I wish I would have considered to do that way earlier in my postdoc, rather than hoping that, oh, it's so expensive, someone will come from the sky and would sponsor my J1 or H1b visa.
For the sake of time, let's cut our questions here and we'll take some questions from the participants. Participants, you can go ahead with your questions directly.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hi.
hi Shivani. Yep.
Hi. I was just concerned about the OPT. Is this OPT different from O1?
I mean, I can jump in quickly there. Yes, the OPT, which we could probably have an entire session on just by itself, given the amount of regulations surrounding it. OPT is called optional practical training. Essentially, when you come to the United States to do a degree, undergraduate, graduate, or PhD, at the end of that degree, at each higher level degree, you have the opportunity to apply for 1 year of employment authorization under optional practical training. Essentially, I suppose, broadly speaking, the US government is saying, look, you've been here to do your degree. We'll give you the opportunity to apply and get employment authorization to work in your field and therefore gain experience pursuant to that degree under which you applied. In the PhD setting, you're eligible to apply for OPT. It's not automatic. You got to liaise with your international office. And at the end of that 1 year, a number of years ago, when STEM sort of started coming to the forefront, they said, okay, we're going to give STEM applicants another 2 years, which you have to apply for. So you've got 3 years of optional practical training, the first year of OPT and then the STEM extension. Once that is approved, you can essentially harness that. Again, I'm speaking broadly here and generally, so don't take this and run with it. You can essentially utilize that to work in positions in your field. The O1 is an employer-sponsored application in which you need to meet a certain standard in order to be approved. That's the significant difference.
So if a researcher is working as a postdoc on J1, so can he or she get transit to industry on OPT?
Well, if you're on a J1, that's a different status. Again, I got to joke a little bit here, and I call it alphabet soup because there's so many letters of the alphabet that are involved here. But keep in mind, you can only ever hold one status in the United States. So if, for example, you're here in the United States on your F1 and then get OPT, and then someone files a H1b for you and you get approved and change your status to H1b, you're now a H1b non-immigrant. That OPT is gone. So you can't be sort of mixing and matching and say, okay, this week I'm going to be a J, and next week I'll be OPT, and next month I'll do a H1. No, so you got to understand, and I don't want to get too into the weeds, I'll give other people opportunities. You got to understand, what am I eligible to do in the status that I hold? What does that allow me to do, and what steps can I take? Okay, and it's always very important, therefore, especially in an academic setting, to have those conversations, I think, with your international office, because they will be able to appraise you of what you can and cannot do.
Okay, thank you so much, Brendan. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. So there was this discussion concerning this academia to industry transition on J1 visa. So I was wondering, let's say I have an existing J1 visa which lasts or which will expire after 1 year. In that case, do I also need to go back to my home country to get a stamp, or is it possible to do this transition from here? Because I have seen at least one people who was telling me that he has done the same thing, that he did this transfer from academia to industry. So can you enlighten me about that?
It's challenging. I think, as I mentioned in the previous question session, to transfer to J1, you are, again, in effect, transferring the DS 2019. Okay, there's going to be a program sponsor involved. So let's say you're at the ABC University in an academic setting, and they have issued you a DS 2019 as the University of X under program code Y or whatever that is, and you want to go over here. Well, if you go to University B, they, and as Eric has mentioned earlier, he's State Department or previous State Department, they will have the authority to issue that new DS 2019. So you can make a seamless transition within an academic setting. The problem with the industry transition is it's just less common. So therefore, does the industry employer who you may wish to transfer your J1 research scholar to, do they have the ability to do that? And that would be a very case-by-case basis, and a very much probably centered around your field, where you're going, all of that stuff. So it's not, in my opinion, I don't think it's really a question that you can fully answer in this sort of context.
I can add a bit. I think the example he was talking about, that if your university has certain startups, industry setting, and you have like collaboration, then those you can work in those startups, but still your sponsor remains your academic setting, and it's like very much rare. It's not very common like people do it, and it's a hybrid situation where essentially you are sponsored by university and working in a small startup linked to it. Otherwise, or you are working in industrial postdoc setting like big organization Genentech and Novartis, who can sponsor J1 directly for industry setting jobs, but they are not essentially purely industry jobs per se, but they're kind of hybrid situation. And then I agree with Brendan what he said, that it's not very common, and it's complicated.
Let me just add one thing to that, and I just want to, and this is a very broad thing I want to say. Please be very careful as you navigate this journey not to engage in activities that are unauthorized pursuant to your visa. So just as Pawan alluded to, you may be able to do other stuff on your J. That's got to be authorized by your program sponsor. You can't just individually decide, oh, I'm going to go and do additional research at this little component over here. Similarly to the OPT, you got to be very careful to make sure that the activities that you engage in are under the umbrella and authorized by that visa, because the last thing you want to do is turn up at your I-485 interview, as Eric probably knows, and be like, some immigration officer says, hold on a second, everything looks good, except you were engaged in unauthorized employment for a certain period of time. You were not authorized under that visa. So very important to understand what you are allowed and authorized to do.
Yeah, that's a great call out, and I think that's important to remember. One other thing I wanted to mention real quick, and I could have kind of slotted this into multiple questions, but one exciting development that came out of the executive order that the Biden administration issued in January was what they're calling the Early Career STEM Initiative. And from talking to some folks at USCIS, I mean, the intent of this is to create a pathway for J visa programs to connect actual employers with postdoc STEM graduates, meaning that for the first time, people could be placed under J programs in small and medium businesses, including startups, as actual, functionally as employees. And this is a very new program. There's not a lot of, I think that you won't see this really roll into effect for several months still. If you look at the Bridge USA page, where all the J programs for interns and trainees and other places are staffed, and the sort of designated sponsor organizations, many of those designated sponsor organizations will be exploring this new category. And I think, especially for folks who are finishing up their postdoc research and looking for ways to transition into possible employment opportunities, this program is designed to create those pathways. And there's no caps, and it's like other J visa programs. This is a way that people could obtain visas relatively quickly. And the idea, I think, is that once you're placed in these organizations, if you are able to, impress the employer and take the usual steps to provide an opportunity there, that an actual job offer under one of the employment-based classifications would follow. So I just wanted to kind of mention that, and for this group, and keep an eye out. That is something that was very intentionally created by the current administration and some of the high-level advisors at USCIS to kind of connect the dots on this conversation that we're having around how do I go from academia to industry.
For the sake of time, we'll just take 2 questions and that can be answered as quickly as possible. Anuja, you can go ahead with your question.
Hi, I had briefly asked a little bit of this. I just wanted to clarify some things. So I'm currently in a nonprofit H1b, and I would like to transfer to a profit H1b and have sort of been looking for that. But the employers want me to join in as soon as possible in this year itself, and the next lottery pickup is only next year. So what is the other option that I have if I want to move from a nonprofit H1b setting to a profit-based company setting? I just wanted more elaborations on that. Thank you.
So I wish I could pour water on your cap exempt H1B and make it cap subject. I wish I could. I can't. However, there are limited ways that it can potentially work. So for example, does the company have a relationship with a university? Do they have a relationship with a cap exempt H1B employer where you may be able to, the placement may work there? Could you, for example, hold concurrent H1Bs where you have a part-time position at the cap exempt employer and a second H1B essentially at the cap subject employer? That can work. Ultimately, I think this would be the type of scenario you're not going to get the full answer here. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. You're going to need to look at it to see what the situation is with your position, your current position, your current employer, and the prospective employer to see if they would fit within one of the exemptions, for want of a better term, and see if it would fit. If not, then you got to ultimately, unfortunately, look at the 01 or next year's lottery in all likelihood.
And could J1 also be another opportunity?
Possibly, and to Eric's point, again, it could either, if the newly issued program, if that worked, or if this company was a J, had the ability to do that. But again, I think it's fair to say in the current climate, as we sit right here, right now, it's probably limited. But again, that's something that they could potentially explore. It could be done, but I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, it can.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Ashish, last question from you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will be in touch with the co-host. I asked the question already, but I just want to clarify some things. In case of I-140 denial, does moving from postdoc to a research assistant professor position helps? And the second point is, do the award, travel awards or young investigator award count in the application?
I mean, I can take a quick, self-petition. I'll say a couple of things. The denial of an I-140, again, from a USCIS perspective, the denial should be issued what we call without prejudice. What that means is, if the application is denied, essentially, again, what I like to say to people is, when you file a self-sponsored green card, it's a fancy way of asking a very simple question: do I qualify for a green card? Do I qualify for a green card as an alien of extraordinary ability? Do I qualify for a green card as an advanced degree alien performing work in the US national interest? So you put that in front of an immigration adjudicator and they make a decision on the record. If they deny it, they're saying, no, in my opinion, right now, you don't qualify. I'm going to deny your case, but I'm going to deny it without prejudice, i.e., I am not going to prejudice you from refiling an application in the future. Now, to your point, what's the difference between the postdoc position versus the research associate position, the travel awards, things like that? I think it's important to note that you got to think about and contemplate your evidence in context. What moves the needle? Because you can file that I-140 form and on whatever page, whatever, where it says position or pro-offered position, is there really a significant difference if you put in postdoc or research scientist or associate research? I think it's fair to say that in the adjudication of these cases, we're looking at the substance of your contributions. I don't necessarily, titles and positions are different at different universities. So I don't know the extent to which the title matter. I mean, look, if you're a PI, but if you're a PI, you probably have the background to support that. Awards, travel awards, things like that. Think about it in the context of what the selection criteria were for those. And honestly, the more limited awards, memberships, things like that, probably doesn't move the needle. Sometimes I actually tell people, think about this, forget about the immigration context for a minute. Think about it in your own professional arena. Are you proud of what you accomplished in that? Did it move the needle for you professionally from a career standpoint? If you had to sit and sell yourself for a job or a position, would you be bringing this to the table and say, look what I've got? Does that separate you from the crowd? And if it does, it's probably going to be substantively important for your immigration application. If it's not, it probably isn't. So just think about that, I think, broadly speaking, in the type of evidence that you're going to bring to the table. That would be my view on it.
Yeah, due to short of time, we'll cut our questions here. Sorry, Sherin and Nandini, you can put your questions in the chat, and I think panelists will be happy to answer that. And yeah, so we are getting close to our time together. So if to the panelists, if there is any one thing that you would like the audience to go as a takeaway from this session, what would it be? Just restrict it to like 1 or 2 sentences. Thank you. Let's start with Brendan.
Well, I gave you my takeaways in my little slides, right? I mean, after all, I hope all the good information that you got from, all my colleagues here today, and I would say 2 things. Again, be flexible in terms of how you approach this journey, because it is a journey, and think about your short, medium, and long-term goals. Those are my 2 takeaways every time I have this discussion.
Eric?
Yep, 100% agree with everything that Brendan said. I think it's just to reemphasize, it's sort of eye on the prize. Like I think Dr. Sina really addressed the elephant in the room, which is without a proper plan to get a permanent status in the United. If indeed you want to build a career in the United States, like you need to be thinking early and often about how do I get a permanent status? How do I find a pathway to residency or naturalization if that's what I want? Because it has such a huge impact on your earnings and career potential over time. And then I think, in terms of dealing with the agency and things like that, there's a lot of bad information out there. And that's why I say, finding the right legal professional to assist you with these complicated immigration processes is really, really key. I think networking is great. I think getting advice from other folks is great. But when it comes to your actual path and journey and the things that you're applying for and the career choices you're making, you really need to make sure that your personal situation is being considered properly and taken into account by somebody. Because, I've seen people go down this journey and it always looks a little different, and the right answer for somebody else may not be the right answer for you. So please, take the time to connect and network and consult and think carefully about things from an immigration perspective. And, that'll ensure you get that great outcome and you're able to navigate this part of the career journey alongside your academic and personal goals.
Dr. Sina.
Yes, thank you all. My 2 cents: network intentionally, proactively, and strategically. And through your networking, recruit folks to your group of mentors. Mentors are like 3 categories. Two most important categories are strategic ins. Those are who are well networked and do not hesitate to offer their network to you. 2, subject matter experts, the ones that don't BS you with like misinformation. So network and have group of mentors to help you navigate regulations, career plans, and your future.
Dr. Pawan. You are not audible, Pawan.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I was just saying, just to add to Brendan, Eric, and what Dr. Sina said, I would say first be clear what you want to do. That has to be very crystal clear in the mind, and don't fear from taking challenges of filing and reviewing, getting many times it's a mental block. It's like an imposter disease. I won't say syndrome. It's a disease. And I would say, as a person, if you're an international person in US, in STEM, working in PhD, postdoc, or whatever, get your profile reviewed. It's free most of the time, and know where you want to go. Academia, industry, at least that much. If you could be clear in your mind or you may want to go back to your country. It doesn't matter, in long term. So I think that has to be very clear. You can try push yourself to get clarity, and I think that would help you a lot. Yeah.
So I know this is a never-ending topic, but we need to cut short at this time point. I would like to thank all the panelists for addressing this interesting topic on immigration planning and giving us detailed insights. This will definitely help us in planning our transition. And thank you all for your time today. And I hope we answered your questions. All the best in your transition to industry, and we'll meet in the next one.
You're done. Sorry.
If you could write a post over LinkedIn or Twitter or any social media platform and tag the panelists, moderator, iSTEM Care about your experience about today's panel discussion and a note about your learnings today, that would be a great gesture from you. We and the panelists are always open to help you in future. I'm sorry if I spoke this on behalf of panelists, but we are open to help you in future, and so please feel free to reach out to them or us in future. You will also receive a feedback survey email regarding this panel discussion, and stay tuned for our next panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you all. Happy Saturday.
Thank you, Ashwin. And thank you all the panelists. I really appreciate your time today, Saturday morning, and kind of giving your effort. And I just wanted to say, everyone, these all people are very helpful, very approachable. So use your social network as a net worth for future questions or clarifications. All right.
Thank you. Happy Saturday.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brendan.